Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food and with movement. And if you're watching this video, chances are that you feel stuck in recovery. Before I start to dive into the topic, I just want to let you know, just because you feel stuck does not mean that it won't get better. Just because you had however many recovery attempts doesn't mean that recovery doesn't work for you. Every time you're trying to recover again, there's going to be one little parameter that's a little bit different. Whether it's your motivation, whether it's how long you've had the eating disorder, whether it's your support system. Any time that you choose recovery again is a new chance. And I know the feeling of, what if it doesn't work for me? What if my body image is too bad? What if I really can't accept my body? Because honestly, most of my clients have these thoughts. I have these thoughts. People I work with in the clinic that I'm working at have these thoughts. And yet I see people recovering all the time. I do know that there are phases in recovery that can feel extra hard. For some people, it's the beginning where you have to really let go of those food rules, where you have to rest, where in some cases, people have to accept weight gain if their body is in a restriction mode. And I do understand how hard that is. At the same time, for some people, these phases are a little bit easier to accept because from the outside and from the inside, we still have the validation of, oh, I kind of need to gain weight, I need to eat. And so other people feel more stuck later on in recovery. Maybe when they're already weight restored, maybe when they have healing hunger, or if you want to call it extreme hunger, that's fine too. They have mental hunger. Maybe their weight will still change even though they are quote unquote weight restored. And I do say quote unquote because first of all, everybody has their own baseline. So we don't use a BMI here. A BMI says nothing about your individual health. And I also say quote unquote because especially after eating disorders, you cannot predict where your weight is going to be at, if it's going to stay there, if it's going to go down again, and both ways are right. I know that a lot of people really hope for overshoot weight to go down, and a lot of people really want to know, is my body an overshoot? Will I stay here? Will the weight go down? And as much as I understand it, I also want to point out this is still holding on to the eating disorder and it's still holding on to the control. But let's talk more about feeling stuck in recovery. Regardless where you are at, if you ever had a recovery attempt before or not, if you just started recovery or if you've been in recovery for a month or even years, feeling stuck does not mean that recovery is not working for you, but it might mean that you have to look a little bit deeper. Oftentimes feeling stuck has more to do with your mindset than you might think. And hear me out, because I know that a lot of people also struggle with physical symptoms, with digestion, with being bloated, with the fear of gaining more weight or with struggling with the weight, and sometimes even with comments from the outside, whether that's doctors, therapists, friends, family, whoever. And I really get it. But you choose recovery, and you have to choose recovery every day. And I do know how hard it is, but this is a decision that you can't only make once and then it's just gonna work. You have to choose recovery every day. And I always say this, the phases and the days that are the hardest are those days that bring the most change. Because yes, recovery is fun and easy on some days, at least for some people. But if you would only choose recovery on the days that are already easy, then you wouldn't really make a big of a change. But the days that are really hard, where your body image is really bad, where somebody makes a comment, or where your motivation is just not there, those are the days that are extremely important. Because those are the days in which you have to choose the opposite action, in which you have to radically accept that this is not fun, that this feels hard, that you don't like what you see in the mirror, and still do it. Because those are the days where you make the biggest change. And I just talked about radical acceptance. A lot of you might be familiar with the term, some of you might not be familiar with the term. Radical acceptance basically means to radically accept everything that's there. Whether it is emotions, whether it is bad body image, whether it is being bloated. Because in the end, nothing is worse than a life with an eating disorder. And even though you chose recovery at some point in your life, it might not always feel that way. You will have days or phases where recovery feels like the wrong choice, where you wish you could go back to your eating disorder, where some people even feel like, oh, I don't even know if I have the strength anymore to go back to my eating disorder, but I miss it. And it's okay. Missing your eating disorder is a big part because at some point in your life, the ED gave you a lot. And you're still in this phase where you're trying to recover from it. So of course, It's not just all simple and easy, because you're in this phase where you don't want to deal with the ED anymore, but you also haven't figured out like healthy coping skills, healthy ways of looking at yourself, healthy ways of dopamine, because for a lot of people that dopamine high goes away. So this is a phase, and I just point that out because no matter how long it takes, it's still a phase. Recovery does not reflect how your recovered life will be. If I would have been stuck in my recovery, I would have gone back and forth. My life would be very, very different now. My life now has little to do with my life in recovery, because even though I started to go out more and do more things, my life in recovery still revolved a lot about eating, around clothes, around my body, around all the physical symptoms that I had coming up in recovery, which were actually more consequences of my ED, but they came out in recovery. Going to doctors, explaining myself, dealing with comments, all this is not really a part of my life anymore. And it's not because my body changed a little bit again, and it's not because, I don't know, recovery was just super easy for me, but it's because I decided to choose recovery every day. When I gained a lot of weight, when I had a lot of comments coming in, when my feet wouldn't even fit into shoes because the water retention was so bad, when I had to go to the doctor all the time because I had neurological issues. But I still decided to do it because part of me understood that all the quote-unquote issues and the hard feelings that I had would have not been there if I hadn't had an eating disorder. So the core issue is not recovery. The core issue is the eating disorder. And I definitely understand this feeling between, oh, but like part of me really misses the eating disorder. And yes, I might see why the ED is not a healthy way of living, but right now everything screams, I want to go back. And again, this does not mean that you can recover, but this means that your eating disorder is getting louder on those days. Sometimes you can distinguish, and sometimes you can see, oh, it's because I was triggered, or because certain emotions came up and I still don't know how to handle emotions. Because believe it or not, that's a big, big part. I know that for a lot of people, it feels like, oh, the eating disorder only serves the purpose of, for instance, being skinny or having control. That's what I thought for so long, and I was not really aware that my eating disorder actually served the purpose of suppressing my emotions. It served the purpose of me not engaging in certain things, of not having the fear of social events, because part of me has social anxiety, which I wasn't even aware of. Because the eating disorder did a great job of keeping me out of all this. But I did not know about that until I chose recovery, because then in recovery, all those things came up. And I was like, oh, I didn't have these issues with an eating disorder. But instead of thinking, oh, so recovery is the problem, I actually chose to think, oh, so the eating disorder was covering something up, and this is now my chance to look under the cover, to look under the deeper and deeper layers. This is something that I'm always doing with my clients. Like, okay, we have this thought, we have this belief. Where is it coming from? Is it really the way you think? Basically like a reality check. And you can do a reality check with anything. Whether it is with your body, where you're like, am I really seeing my body correctly? And I know that for a lot of people, it can feel so hard to believe that you see yourself different than other people. But I'm telling you, perception of your own body is always different. Even for somebody who doesn't have an eating disorder, they will perceive themselves a little bit different than other people will. And normally we perceive ourselves a little bit more negative, or we focus on like certain details and then just see those details as something negative. While other people probably don't even notice or see you differently, and especially with body dysmorphia, you cannot believe your own brain. And that does not mean that you're crazy, and I know how hard that feeling can be. Like, what do you mean I can't believe my certain brain? Am I going crazy? No. But this is just something where you have to radically accept, I can't believe this right now, and I cannot base my decisions on that. So what I mean by that, if you have a very bad body image day, if your clothes size goes up, if whatever it is that's triggering you, you can still not base the decision, am I gonna eat today, am I gonna rest today, on that. That's a big part of recovery. You will have days where you feel overwhelmed, where you will cry. Some people even panic. I panicked when I saw my body changing, when I saw the sizes in my clothes changing, when I wouldn't fit into other things anymore, when I would see pictures of myself. I genuinely panicked. I cried, I panicked, I burned at home, and I still had to make the decision to not skip a meal, to not go back to exercising. Again, I know how impossible it can feel, but you have to make this conscious decision, and you have to radically accept that these are the feelings and the thought you have right now. you can still work on rewiring and rephrasing them. Oftentimes it can be helpful to either get some distraction, do a reality check, talk to a loved one, focus on something else. Emotions are normally just in our body for 90 seconds. That is scientifically proven because your emotions have a lot to do with your thoughts. So any emotion that gets triggered, your brain will still set a signal, and you will feel that emotion in your body because our brain and our body work together very deeply. But emotions are designed to stay in your body for 90 seconds. So if the emotion stays any longer, that means that you're subconsciously reinforcing it with your thoughts. So let's say I have a happy moment, I'm super happy about something, I have this happy feeling in my body, and the whole day I'm happy. This is because I constantly think about it, maybe even subconsciously. Even the moments where I'm not thinking about it, my body just knows, oh, we have the happy feeling, so something good must have been happening, and it goes over and over again. Same thing with a quote-unquote negative emotion. And I say quote-unquote because sometimes those emotions that feel very negative can be a very good helper to understand what's going on. If somebody says something and it makes me sad, it's actually a sign for me like, oh, there must be something underlying here. Sometimes it's very obvious, but sometimes not. Same thing with triggers. If you are triggered by something, it can feel horrible, it can feel out of control, but a trigger is always a sign that there is a part of you that needs more healing. And so, let's say you have a negative emotion about something and you keep thinking about it and you keep having this like heavy feeling, it will reinforce itself. So the reason I'm saying that is because you have more control over your emotions than you think. It's not always that easy. I sometimes just have shitty days and I'm not super good at switching my mood all the way from like I'm having a bad day to, oh, this day is great. I'm just being very honest here. That I did learn that I don't have to engage with a negative emotion to the point where it like really ruins my day. I can still say, okay, the start of this day was really not great. This might have not been the best day in this year yet, but I can still decide to like see a little positive, whether it's in my like day-to-day interaction, whether it's to focus on something that I'm still grateful for. For instance, last week, my car broke down. I was standing in front of my car at 5 a.m. in the morning. I had to go all the way to the valley, which is like a 90-minute drive for me. And so I had to take an Uber. And I was honestly pissed. Like my car had broken down. I still had to show up to work. It was like $100 Uber one way, and I knew that I had to go back. But then part of me was like, well, I still have this money in my bank account. I didn't plan on using this money for that ride, but I still have this money saved. What a privilege. And so reminding yourself of things that you're grateful for can also be very helpful. Another thing that I really like to talk about, as many of you know, is the neurology of things. Our brain really learns from our thoughts, and our brain learns from our behaviors. Because if we're looking back at like ancient times, evolutionary spoken, that's the only way to survive. If you had a situation where you learned something is dangerous, and afterwards you react like this thing is dangerous all over again, your brain will learn from you, and eventually your brain will see the thing as dangerous. So that helps you to subconsciously avoid danger. But the thing is, with eating disorders, with body image, if you act like food is dangerous because you've been avoiding it for so long, then your brain literally learns that food is dangerous. So chances are that if you start eating food, you will feel like you're doing something very wrong, and some people might even get a panic attack. So you have to do it over and over again. And I know it feels counterintuitive, and we always say to listen to our gut feeling and our emotions, but when it comes to eating disorders, this is not a gut feeling. This is the eating disorder lying to you. So whether it is body image, where you avoid mirrors completely, and it can be tricky to find a middle way because we also don't want a body check, but where you avoid that completely, where you avoid going out because you feel like, oh, nobody can see my body, it's so bad, then your brain automatically learns, oh, it's bad to be in this body, it's bad for other people to see this. So sometimes you have to challenge certain things, whether it's food, whether it's clothes, whether it's going out, whether it's social events, or whether it's setting a boundary. Because a lot of people with EDs actually struggle with setting boundaries. Oftentimes the ED is actually our way to set boundaries because it kind of does it for us. And so once we start recovering, we have to learn to set those boundaries. Whether it's a boundary about like, hey, I don't want to come, I don't want to do this is too much. Because oftentimes with restrictive eating disorders, people stop asking us because they're so scared for our health. But then when we start recovering, people might not be that scared anymore. And so this is still okay to set a boundary here. It's still okay to say no. And same thing with comments. I had to set hundreds of boundaries when it came to comments for my body. Whether it was comments that were, meant nicely, like, oh, you look so much better, when I didn't feel better, or comments like, oh, she gained a lot of weight, like she has to be careful. I had to start setting boundaries. And people were getting so uncomfortable, which I honestly didn't mind, because I was like, you actively make a comment about my body and now you get uncomfortable when I tell you that this is not okay. This is clearly a you problem. And I know also that it's way easier said than done. It took me a long time, and I'm still working on setting boundaries in my day-to-day life when it comes to other parts. But at least with my body, I've been, getting very good with that, because my body has been through a lot. People don't know my personal history. So even now, if I get a compliment, for instance, if somebody's like, oh, did you lose weight? I'm setting a boundary and I'm like, I don't know. And I actually don't like to get those comments, or, something along those lines. So setting boundaries is also like a huge, important thing in recovery. And especially when you're feeling stuck, it can help you to take this power again, like to take control again. Because feeling stuck oftentimes actually means feeling like you don't have control. And you do have control, but in another way. You're not controlling your food anymore. You're not controlling your body anymore. You're not controlling your steps anymore. Control that you eat enough food, you control that you rest enough, and you can also control your reactions. You can control that you learn to set boundaries. You can control that you rephrase your thoughts. A big part of the recovery coaching is to create new beliefs. To first of all take a look, okay, what negative beliefs do I have at the moment, and then how can I replace that belief? Because our brain does not work in terms of, oh, I'm just deleting an old belief. We always have to replace it with something. And so same with other things that the eating disorder had a purpose of. If the purpose of the eating disorder was to suppress emotions, we have to learn to replace it, not to replace it with something else to suppress emotions. Unfortunately, we see that way too often when people start doing substances or start working out too much or start doing anything that's kind of like just moving from the eating disorder to something else to suppress the emotions. But we have to learn to handle the emotions. We have to learn to find an outlet. We have to learn to sit with them, whatever it is, because sometimes having an outlet, for instance, for anger, for grief, or whatever is important, and sometimes also learning to sit with them is important. But we have to learn to do that, and that's why it can be so helpful to work with a coach, a therapist, whoever you want to work with, honestly, because I think there is no right or wrong. A lot of my clients actually have a therapist and then work with me, which is just fine, because either your therapist and your coach can actually like collaborate and be like, okay, hey, this is what's going on. Okay, we're going to focus on this and you're going to talk about certain things. But whatever feels right for you. I'm not saying that you need a coach to recover, but I'm saying that sometimes working with somebody, and if it's a therapist, that's just as fine. But working with somebody who holds you accountable, who's a little bit more of a neutral person, because oftentimes family members are just too emotionally involved. So who's emotional, but who's also honest with you, pushes you out of your comfort zone, can be extremely helpful, especially on days or weeks or phases where you feel stuck. That's so important. And one last thing before we finish this video is, oftentimes feeling stuck comes in later phases. As I said before, when you feel like, oh, I am weight restored already, I might still have mental hunger, or even if the mental hunger is going down and you find yourself kind of slipping into old patterns again. And sometimes it's something that people need a lot of time until they recognize it, because it feels so intuitive. But then when I talk to them and they say to me like, and they tell me, oh, this and this and this and this is something that I'm afraid of, and I'm doing this, and this is my fear, and I hope that my weight will go down. This is clearly a sign for me that there's still so many underlying beliefs. And so that explains why you're feeling stuck, because part of you still wants to go back. Part of you still has beliefs around a certain body type, about being feminine, about controlling food, about healthy and unhealthy. So this is still something where a lot of people feel stuck because they feel like, okay, physically I changed, I've been doing what I'm supposed to do, but I still have all those beliefs and thoughts, and I even think they are real, and then I get mirrored from somebody like, hey, this might still be an eating disorder thought. So this is also a phase where people might still feel stuck. Just because you've done recovery for a certain amount of time and you've been doing things right does not mean that you feeling stuck is a bad thing. It's just a chance to level up, a chance to look at those things that still are holding you back and to then make a decision to change them and to level up and get even closer to recovery. I hope this video helped me. I hope this video helped you guys. Let me know in the comments if you like this video, if you have specific questions as to this topic or another video topic that you would like me to cover. And as always, I will see you in the next one, guys.